So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, guys, based on the time zones you all are coming from. So my name is Neeraj Kheria. So the main agenda for today's session is we are going to discuss on the need for data pipeline. We are going to discuss on what exactly data pipeline is, what are the different components available in data pipeline, and how we can have the entire data pipeline deployed. So now let's get started. So first of all, let's discuss on the need of data pipeline. Now let's understand this by a hypothetical example. So for example, the main goal of any business currently on Pinterest, the main goal is to improve the business by targeting content, because Pinterest, as you know, is a really good content marketing platform where we can design, which is highly useful for creative professionals so that they can upload the designs, the patterns, and they can build a community, and then they can get the right target audience who are looking for that particular work they are currently doing. Now, in order to, we can have multiple goals here as well. Like can have goal 2 where we can manage application efficiently, and then we can improve the business faster but at a cheaper rate. So these are main 3 goals that we are trying to achieve as the example. Right? Now, the problem statement here is, again, in terms of problem statement, we have now there's a huge amount of data stored in different formats as well. So pre-processing, storing, migrating, and migrating the entire data becomes complex, especially when we are talking about unstructured data set. So when we talk about data set, then we have 3 types: structured, unstructured, and semi-structured. And majority of the data coming in from the social media platforms, they are highly structured, or in some scenarios semi-structured as well. And then here we want to, in terms of these social media platforms, we have to have a real-time data for registered user. We need web servers logs for potential users and demographic data for login credentials, along with sensor data and third-party data set. So there are different formats of these. Now these data are all available in different formats. And again, that's why the entire processing, taking the storage, the migration of data from one point to the other is also going to be complicated. It is not going to be an easy task. And because again, for real-time data for registered users, we can use a service called as DynamoDB. So DynamoDB is basically used for unstructured data set, where we can have schema-less data set stored, and then we can retrieve it. We can define the time to live, and again, we can retrieve the files at any point of time. We can easily do that. Then we have web server logs for maintaining logs, and that too in a cost-efficient service. We can use something called as S3, where S3 is a simple storage service offered by AWS for storing static data set. Then for demographic data and logging credentials, we can use a service called as Amazon RDS. RDS refers to Relational Database Service. And then we have S3, again for storing sensor data and third-party data set to maintain the balance between the cost and the pricing. So we have different solutions being offered for different problem statement that we have as a part of services offered by AWS. And again, here it is going to be a feasible solution. We can analyze the data and convert from unstructured to structured format. And the optimal solution would be to use a data pipeline, which handles processing, visualization, and migration of data from its own end. That's the main solution that we can offer for these different problem statements. The main problem statement from this entire scenario is the data migration itself. Suppose if we want to migrate data, we want to simply store data in multiple locations. For example, we want to store the DynamoDB in S3 here. We want to store data from our EBS columns into S3. Then we can easily do that. And that's why we have to take the help of service offered by AWS in the entire cluster of 150 plus services, that is data pipeline. So first of all, let's understand what exactly data pipeline is. So data pipeline is basically a web service that allows us to process and move data between different AWS computation and storage services, as well as on-premise data sources at specific intervals. So using data pipeline, we can define, if you suppose the EC2 instance that we have been working on. right? So now daily it can copy all the log files and store in the S3 bucket. And here we can define the weekly task. That means it should launch the complete data analysis, and that can be mapped and that can be processed back. We can say forward with Amazon EMR. EMR refers to Elastic Map Reduce. So data pipeline, again, they are connected. They can be used with multiple data stores. Like we have RDS, DynamoDB, and then we have S3. So here we have RDS, DynamoDB, and S3. It can be used with multiple computation resources that you want to deploy. And again, we can have the entire data being stored as a part of data store itself. Now, as a first example, we can launch our data analysis where we can collect data from different data sources, and we can perform the EMR analysis and we can generate weekly reports if we have different data coming in from different sources from DynamoDB. Then we can connect them with the daily EMR analytics that we can perform. And then here if we have bulk data coming in from S3, it can also be processed by the EMR, and then we can combine multiple sources coming in into a complete MR, we can say EMR analytics, and then we can use on the server or storage services for storing all the log files for it, all the important log files one by one. Now, the main benefit of data pipeline again can be used to provide a drag and drop console. We don't have to manually select the file here, unlike all the other platforms. It is built on distributed, reliable infrastructure. That means even in any kind of failures, or we can say failovers, the main server has been structured in such a manner in different regions and so on. That means it will take the least amount of failovers, and in case if we face that, we can easily come back. Because again, for large applications, the downtime matters a lot, because again, if they are large applications and they observe us downtime of even few seconds, then that means that they are going to suffer a big loss. And then it supports scheduling and error handling. It simply distributes the work to one machine or many. It is inexpensive to use, and it offers control over computation requirements. All right, so now next is we have AWS Data Pipeline components. So pipeline basically has three main core components available. Like we have pipeline definition. So basically using pipeline, we can specify the business logic of data management. Then we have pipelines. So now in pipeline definition, we can define data nodes, activities, schedules, preconditions, resources, and actions. So basically without every component, we cannot have a complete data management being done. So we have to define where exactly data is located as a part of data nodes, then the activities which has been scheduled on that particular data set, along with the timestamp, then what are actions that we have taken, for which all the resources this entire policy is going to reflect, or you can say affect, and then what are the preconditions required, if any. Then we have to define the entire pipeline where we can use pipeline to run the task to perform defined activities. And here we have pipeline components, instances, and then we have attempts. That is which all pipeline components we are going to configure, or we can say how many or which all instance we are going to use for extraction, again the entire number of attempts. And then we have task runner. So again, it will simply allow the AWS data pipeline for tasks and then perform those tasks. So it can be pipeline scheduled tasks, and again it can be task runner for tasks. And then whenever the conditions are being fulfilled, then only the entire task is going to be deployed. And again, here when we are following AWS data pipeline for tasks, then we can perform these given tasks as a part of data pipeline, where we can define the entire scheduled task for pipeline. We can retire the remaining pipelines. And again, if you're going to, first of all, if you're going to hold that up, we can simply use the task runner for the polling task. Then again, here, if the entire task has already been succeeded, then we can simply ask the returner to report back when the time is done. So that's how the entire component of data pipeline is structured. So now we are going to look at the hands-on on top of it. So now let's get started on our discussion on a service named as data pipeline that we basically use for seeing how we can migrate our data set from one service to the other. And for example, let's say we have a data stored in S3. Now we want to migrate it to from as a part of unstructured tables in DynamoDB. We have some data stored in DynamoDB, and now we want to migrate it to we can say to S3, or for example from S3 to Redshift, Redshift back to S3 and to other services. Then we can use a service called as data pipeline. So now let's see how we can get started. So let's move back to our console. So now in console we have to look for a service named as data pipeline. So now just like we have been looking at multiple services, we have to look for a service named as data pipeline. So as we have been using the same search bar, we can search for data pipeline as a service. Let's open it up. Now, in case if we don't have any data pipeline deployed yet, we are going to see this blank screen. And remember, data pipeline is not available in every service as of now. So data pipeline is currently available only in 5 regions. And to see the list of regions, we can use the region link available on top. So here we have in North Virginia, Oregon, Sydney, Tokyo, and Ireland. So we have Orient, and again we have only these available regions supported that we support data pipeline as of now. And still these services which are not available currently, they are being deployed in multiple phases. Because first of all, for any new service, it is being tested in a selected region, and if it is successful, then only it gets deployed in multiple other regions as well, step by step, right? So here to get started, we can choose any of the given regions here. Let's say we start with North Virginia here. So here we have selected US North Virginia, so we can stay in North Virginia to start deployment of our service, and here we can click on get started now. And here we can see, here we can define the entire pipeline by defining the name. Let's say we can define the name as the pipeline let's suppose we are going to create for Edureka for the month of May 2020. So basically we don't name it as we can say any general name. Here we simply keep it restricted to the type of job that we are going to create. So for example, if you're going to create a pipeline for S3 from S3 to DynamoDB now, we haven't discussed on these services, like what exactly is DynamoDB, what exactly we mean by Redshift, by MySQL tables. These are something that we are going to discuss in our further sessions, step by step. So first of all, here we can build using a complete template. Now, first of all, here we can define a description as well. Why we add a description? Same as every other service. If we are using the same, if multiple other people are also going to be using the same pipeline, then they should be aware of okay, what exactly this pipeline was created for. What's the main purpose for it, right? And that exactly is what the data pipeline is useful for. So data pipeline is basically used for migration of data from one service to the other. So in case we don't want to migrate them one by one manually, then we can use data pipeline for migration. Let's suppose if we want to migrate from any table in DynamoDB and save it to S3 or vice versa, we can easily do that using data pipeline. All right. And again a reminder that again, this is not a part of the, again, if you are going for the data certification point of view, then this is not a part of certification till associate level. But again, and this comes as a part of discussion when we are going for a professional level training, but not till associate level of certification. But in case we are going for any enterprise solution, we should be well aware of how things are being deployed in the enterprises by using this service, right? So here we can define the type. So here we can choose a source as a build type, where we can choose from if you want to run a simple CLI command to create a complete template from scratch. So in case we are familiar with the entire CLI, as in the shell scripting, that we can go ahead and use a CLI for creating the entire data set, or we can export if we have a requirement or working with DynamoDB. So DynamoDB, now we haven't discussed on DynamoDB yet. So DynamoDB is basically a NoSQL service offered by AWS, which is useful for transferring, which is useful for unstructured data set. So here we can define the entire data set in terms of rows, where we can have a faster access to data set as compared to our traditional database. We can have a complete schema-less structure, and then we can deploy, the entire dynamic, we can say unstructured data set as a part of table here. So here we can choose from any, if we have any backup. Now once we suppose say today we did export our DynamoDB table to S3, and after a while, for example, suppose after 1 week, after 3 weeks, now we want to restore that table from the data that we have exported. Then we can choose import DynamoDB backup data from S3. Because again, after exporting, because when we are exporting it, we are mostly storing it as a backup only. So that for any point of time, we can use it for, if you want to share that backup with any other account owners, we can easily do that, because then we are going to get a complete S3, or you can say shareable link using S3, like we discussed. So we can either use that link, or we can use the DynamoDB backup to restore or create any new table at any given point of time. We can choose any of these different DynamoDB templates. If we have a requirement of using the EMR, so EMR is again not a part of discussion for the associate level certification, but EMR is basically Elastic MapReduce. Just like we have MapReduce components for big data, we have Elastic MapReduce, where we can use MapReduce cluster, and we can run a job on MapReduce cluster itself. We can easily do that. And then we can also choose how we can run the job for RDS as in relational database service. Again, this is a service that we haven't discussed so far, but again, if you want, RDS is basically a relational database service that is offered by AWS. That is something that we are going to discuss in our next module itself. And RDS is basically used for designing the entire databases. For example, here we can choose from multiple database engines offered. Let's say if we can choose from MariaDB, we can choose from Postgre or Aurora or MySQL instances. We can choose Oracle database engines. We can choose Microsoft SQL servers. So depending upon our requirement, we can choose any of the given database engines, and then we can copy the full RDS MySQL table to S3, or same way we can do vice versa. That means we can import the copy from S3 into MariaDB into RDS as well, or we can copy the incremental copy, just like we had discussed the concept of incremental backups. So incremental backups, just like we have incremental backups in S3, right? Same way we have incremental backups available in RDS as well. So for every subsequent changes, the same backup will be stored and updated, just like we had discussed earlier. And then we have load S3 data into RDS MySQL table. So if we have a local file, for example, if we have a local SQL import available in S3 bucket, then we can use that table in order to restore the RDS that we have launched. We can use any of the given RDS instances. And then towards the end, we can copy the full RDS SQL into Redshift. So Redshift is basically, again, a service that we are going to discuss further on as a part of our entire certification training. So Redshift is basically a data warehousing service that is basically used for storing data. If we have data coming in from multiple sources, let's say if we have data coming in from multiple, suppose 5 different sources. Let's say we are trying to perform the analysis of sales data for Walmart. Then we can store data set coming in from multiple sources, and that too in a centralized location. And then we can connect that data warehouse to multiple platforms. I suppose if we want to connect that with machine learning platforms, with multiple BI tools, like we have Tableau, we can connect that with ClickSense, we can with Alteryx, with Informatica. So we have multiple integrations available that we can connect to as a part of data warehousing service. And same way, if we want to copy the RDS MySQL table to Redshift, if we want to go for incremental copy, incremental same as incremental backups, if you want to store incremental copy of RDS MySQL table into Redshift, if you want to load data from S3 into Redshift, then we can choose any of these services accordingly as per the requirement. So we can choose any of the given template. For example, suppose if you want to export any DynamoDB table, so we can choose export DynamoDB table here, and then we can choose. Now, for example, suppose if you want to ship any incremental copy here. correct? For example, here we want to maintain an incremental copy here for RDS. So as we can see here in RDS, we can choose the entire column name. We can choose the MySQL credential that we have generated for our entire account. We can choose the entire output folder, output S3 folder as in the bucket name, right? Suppose if we have a specific bucket we can choose from, we can, for browsing, we can choose the entire S3 buckets. Now here we can see the list of all the available buckets that we have, correct? For example, let's say if we want to use this one, April 26. And again, if we have any specific folders, we can see we have folders for, let's say we have folders for financial reports. We can choose any of the given folder, click on select. So here we can see the entire folder has been selected. That means if we enter the credentials for the RDS instance that we had deployed, we can choose the output S3 folder and then we can deploy the solution accordingly. And then we have to define the MySQL username. That means the database username here. We have to choose the instance type from which we are going to use for the migration. Then we are going to specify the instance ID. Instance ID as in every service in RDS is also coupled with multiple RDS, we can say instance. So for support, just like we deploy EC2 instance, we also have to deploy RDS instance, and then we can choose that instance in order to migrate the data here in S3. All right. So basically here we can migrate the entire schema, the entire database here. And then once we specified that, then we can define the entire schedule as well. That means when exactly we want the entire migration to be happening. So we can define, if we want to keep it manual, that means we don't want to automate, we don't want to define a complete schedule. Then we can define, okay, we want this to be integrated on a pipeline activation. That means if we go ahead and manually activate that, then only this entire migration will take place, not on a regular basis. And then we, again, if you want to keep it on a schedule, because generally we keep it on schedule itself, then we can define, we have to run this entire migration every 1 week, and that too at a specific timeline. So we can keep the entire window open so that we can have the entire migration executed in that particular time frame itself. And then if we want to maintain logs for each and every activity here, we can enable or disable logs. So logs are something that we can also maintain by using another service that we are going to discuss as a part of our certification training, that is called as CloudTrail. So CloudTrail is basically a fully managed database, or we can say log management service through which we can maintain the log activity, that means the activities happening for the entire AWS account from any user, from any region, and for every read and write operations happening for every service. We can also use the entire location for maintaining the log record as well that has been generated from this particular pipeline. For example, if you want to maintain the log records for the entire operations team, to know in case there has been some failures, then we can use these logs for the references, or if you want to refer to any of the logs, then we can also do that by using the entire log that will be saved in the given folder that we can specify here. We can easily maintain that. And then we can define the security access. That is, again, if you want to be specific for any particular roles. Roles, as we had discussed, it simply gives the access to for one service to the other. If we are going to create a complete schedule for letting the RDS write we can say some data in S3, then obviously we had discussed that we need to make sure that the RDS roles are also defined. That means we have to make sure we have a role defined, giving the access to the RDS to write data on top of S3, because if we don't do that, this is not going to generate, or you can say write anything on S3, as we had discussed. So for one service to communicate with the other services, we have to make sure that we are given the right set of credentials. And roles will simply allow us to do that. So if we keep it default, again, it can simply create our own role and then have it deployed here. And then we can use tags. Tags, as we have been discussing, tags are one of the most important components for any application that we are going to deploy. So we can maintain the company, so we can maintain the resource as a part of the entire application, so that we can choose that particular app. We can, for example, if we had deployed 50 different resources for an application, including this entire data pipeline, then we can see the entire list of all the resources at once. We can see the entire billing as well, and we can have a complete control over our solution when we are combining them by the concept of tags. So thank you so much for joining, guys, and have a great day ahead. Take care. Bye-bye.